Hey everyone, in this video a close look at two relatively new gravel handlebar offerings that cater more toward the chill-paced adventure cyclist and less toward the speed demon elite racer. Now I don't know if this is a thing, but we're calling them alt drop bars for the purposes of this video. The first handlebar is the Ritchey Corralitos along with their new gravel grips, and the second is the new Redshift Top Shelf bar along with their cruise control grip system. Now both of these bars and accessories were sent to the channel for review, but all thoughts and opinions are my own, and neither company has seen this video before it went live. So the plan is to discuss each bar separately and then talk about the things that I like and dislike about each. So I'll start with the Ritchey Corralitos bar. This is a drop bar that's meant for someone who prefers a slightly more upright and less stretched out position on the bike. It's Ritchey's shortest reach and shallowest drop handlebar, which makes it really easy to switch up your hand position without affecting your body position too much. Now on a typical road drop bar, it's not uncommon to see a drop of 120 millimeters or more, which definitely will put you in a more aggressive riding position. Now with the Corralitos 67mm drop, it's almost as comfortable in the drops as in the hoods, which is really nice because truthfully I'm almost never in the drops on bars with a deep drop. I'm just not that flexible. Now it also comes in a few widths starting at 44 centimeters, going up to 50 centimeters in 2 centimeter increments. Now these bars feature 5 degrees of back sweep, 24 degrees of flare, and 12 degrees of flare out at the drops. Now for me, the 24 degrees of flare is just about my upper limit, as any more flare tends to make riding in the hoods feel a little bit awkward since the controls get angled inward too much. But I also prefer at least 12 degrees of flare in the drops, otherwise it feels a little bit too roady for me. So pretty narrow personal range of drop flare, but the Corralitos fits right in there. These bars also have a slight rise of 15 millimeters, which brings everything up for some additional comfort. Now I forgot to mention, I tested both of these handlebars on the Polygon Bend R9X over here, and this is an adventure gravel bike, and it already has a pretty high stack of 612 millimeters for this size medium. So when testing both of these handlebars, I actually had to take out a few spacers below the stem to lower the handlebars a bit because I almost felt too upright, which for me is really saying something. Anyways, the Corralitos comes in the Comp line of products, which is Ritchey's more budget-oriented line, sitting just above the RL1 line of budget parts. And so it's not the lightest handlebar out there, but by today's standards, it's a really good value at $55 US in mid-2024. Now this demo set is a 46 centimeter width handlebar and weighs in at about 350 grams, and it's made using double-butted 6061 alloy in a black anodized finish. Now for my testing, I also installed a pair of Ritchey's gravel grips, which are basically your old school high density foam grips, but reimagined for gravel use. They're 200 millimeters long, 4 millimeters thick, and they're meant to slide up the drops of the bars for some additional comfort. Now at first I was a little bit skeptical and I kind of wondered what the point of these were, but after riding on them, I have to say they're actually pretty comfortable, and they really do help absorb some trail chatter. Now they're conceptually very similar to the Redshift drop bar grips that I'll talk about in just a minute, but in short, I do like them. Okay, so with that, let's transition over to the Redshift Top Shelf bar and talk about this really interesting take on a gravel handlebar. Very different in aesthetic, but actually aims to achieve some of the same things as the Corralitos in my opinion. Now for starters, it comes in similar widths from 44 centimeters up to 53 centimeters, so a slightly wider offering than the Corralitos. The Top Shelf also features a 25 degree flare at the drops and 7 degrees of back sweep, again, very similar to the Corralitos. These are also constructed from 6061 alloy, and they're also anodized black. Now the places where these handlebars differ, of course, starts with the rise and the unique design of the bar. The Top Shelf bar comes in two different options for rise, a 50 millimeter rise and a whopping 70 millimeters of rise for some seriously upright riding. Now the bars that I'm testing here are the 50 millimeter rise in a 47 centimeter width, and even these feel pretty extreme for a drop bar. Now the drop on these handlebars is 110 millimeters, which does seem much deeper than the Corralitos 67 millimeters. But you also have to consider the Top Shelf bars have so much more rise, so the effective drop would be something like 110 minus 50 or 60 millimeters of effective drop for the 50 millimeter rise, and 110 minus 70 equals 40 millimeters of drop for the 70 millimeter rise. The Corralitos, on the other hand, would have 67 minus 15 equals 52 millimeters of effective drop. So even though the Top Shelf has a much larger drop on paper, both bars have a similar effective drop from the level of the stem. Now the top shelf bars really set themselves apart with the BMX style design. The crossmember running across the top of the handlebars gives them an interesting look, but some will definitely take advantage of all that real estate for mounting bags or lights or whatever other things you want to mount. It should be noted, however, that while the stem clamp diameter is your standard 31.8 millimeters, the crossbar has a diameter of 25.4 millimeters, so you may need to use some shims if you have accessories that are designed to clamp to 31.8 and you want to put them on the crossbar. Okay, so in addition to trying the top shelf bars, I've also installed the Redshift cruise control grip system, which includes these ergonomic pads for the bend near the hoods, as well as these ergonomic grips for the drops. Now the installation is fairly straightforward, but certainly requires more patience than the Ritchey gravel grips. Now because you really don't want the top pads to rotate down while riding, Redshift includes some strong double stick tape, as well as some fiber reinforced tape to secure the pads to the bars. Now the grips for the drop section of the bars are also a lock-on style to ensure that they don't rotate. And then if you're using these accessories in addition to a really wide handlebar, like the 53 centimeter version for instance, you may also need some longer bar tape, which is why Redshift also offered their quote really long bar tape measuring at 315 centimeters per roll, which is considerably longer than your typical 200 to 220 centimeter roll. Now in my case here, since the drop grips have you start the tape job about 100 millimeters up from the end of the drops, and since I'm only using a 47 centimeter width bar, I was actually able to tape both sides using a single roll of the really long bar tape with a few centimeters left over. Now as far as my experience with the Redshift add-ons, I do like the pads on the top. It really gives you a nice ergonomic grip when cruising along, and it's a nice solution because a lot of handlebars have that flattened ergo section on the tops, but these types of bars tend to cost a lot more due to the more complicated manufacturing process. So adding adjustable rubberized pads to an otherwise round bar actually makes a lot of sense here. Now as far as the drop grips, I actually like the idea a lot, but when I'm riding in the drops, I tend to wedge my hands forward into the bend, partly for a more secure grip, but mostly so I can reach the brake levers. Now the Redshift drop grips feel really nice, but when I'm actually resting my hands on them, I can't reach the brakes. So to me, these grips are really meant for when you're just cruising along the flats and you don't really need to keep a finger on the brakes. By contrast, the Ritchey gravel grips aren't as ergonomic, but they do slide all the way up to the base of the shifters. So even when I'm in a descending position with my hands wedged forward into the drops, I'm still benefiting from the comfort of the foam grips. Now I should mention that the Redshift Top Shelf bars alone will set you back about $140 in mid-2024, which is substantially higher than the $55 for the Corralitos. The Top Shelf bars in a comparable size also weigh a lot more than the Corralitos due to that crossbar design. For instance, these 47 centimeter width, 50 millimeter rise handlebars weigh in at 509 grams, which is about 160 grams heavier than the 46 centimeter Corralitos. So the price discrepancy is probably my biggest concern for the Redshift. Now as far as ride feel, both handlebars are constructed from the same material, with the Ritchey Corralitos using a double butted profile, while the Redshift doesn't actually state the butting profile of the tubing. Nonetheless, both bars ride pretty comfortable and feel similar in terms of vibration damping, but I also think that's a little bit clouded since I was using the gravel grips on the Corralitos as well as the padded cruise control system on the Redshift. Now I will note that neither bar felt particularly harsh while riding, which is a plus. Now one other thing to note is that the Redshift bars do come in more sizes, and something that I haven't mentioned yet is that the Redshift handlebars actually feature a size-specific reach, with the handlebars having an incrementally shorter reach as the bars get wider. Now this is actually a big plus for the Redshift, as it at least attempts to preserve the rider's body position while varying the handlebar width. The Corralitos, on the other hand, uses the same reach for all the widths, which may necessitate the need for a different stem if you're going to go super wide. And then as far as the dimensions and the specs, both handlebars actually have a similar feel while riding. The width, the drop, the flare, and the back sweep are all pretty comparable, to be honest. So I think what it really comes down to is the design of the top shelf. Now you do get that interesting crossbar, which is unique in the market today. Now, whether or not it's worth more than double the price of the Corralitos is still up for debate, but the top shelf bar is certainly positioning itself as a unique product. And I think many cyclists will be happy to pay that premium for the extra real estate for mounting accessories up top. Now for me personally, I don't consider myself to be an extremist in any direction, so while the Redshift is certainly unique, I don't think that I would personally benefit from the crossbar up top, but that's not to say that others wouldn't. I just don't do that much long distance adventuring to warrant the extra material and the weight penalty, since I don't need to mount that much stuff to the bars. For me, the Corralitos isn't as extreme, but it makes several minor adjustments to a more standard drop handlebar that add up to something wholly different. And I actually enjoyed riding the Corralitos a lot, especially on a bike like the Polygon Bend, which has a more relaxed and chill geometry to begin with. So there you have it, a close look at two pretty interesting adventure bars. Alt drop bars, I suppose you can call them. One takes a subtle approach and makes many minor tweaks, while the other completely reimagines what a drop handlebar can be, and I enjoyed riding both of them. Now, if you have any questions about my experience with either of these handlebars, just leave them down below and we'll do our best to get back to as many as we can. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't already, we'll see you next time.